Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine, a sense of unease that settles deep in your bones? That's the feeling that gripped Havenwood, Mississippi, on October 26, 2003. It was a beautiful autumn day, the air crisp and clean, the leaves ablaze with color. A picture-perfect day, you might say. But beneath the surface of that tranquility, a disquieting mystery was unfolding. A beloved figure, a man of God, had simply vanished. Gone, like a whisper in the wind. Father Elijah Johnson wasn't just any priest. He was the heart of Havenwood, a man who offered solace, a man who inspired hope. He was more than a pastor. He was a friend, a confidant, a guiding light in their lives. Imagine the shock, the disbelief, when the news spread like wildfire. Father Elijah was missing, vanished without a trace. It was unthinkable. Had someone harmed him? Had he run off, abandoning his flock? Or was there a more complicated, a more unsettling explanation? The Havenwood Police Department, a small force accustomed to quiet nights and minor disturbances, found themselves facing a puzzle they weren't equipped to solve. Sheriff Thompson, a man with a good heart and a no-nonsense approach, led the investigation. They searched Father Elijah's apartment, a modest place near the church. Nothing seemed amiss. No forced entry, no signs of a struggle. His Bible lay open on the nightstand, a bookmark marking the passage in Psalms. It seemed as though he'd simply stepped out. But where? His car, a reliable old sedan, was still parked in the church lot. It was as if he'd vanished into thin air. The initial interviews with parishioners offered no answers. Everyone spoke of Father Elijah with reverence. He was a saint, one woman sobbed. He helped me through my darkest days. Another recalled his infectious laughter, the way he could light up a room. He always had time for everyone, a young man said. He never judged. But as the days turned into weeks, a gnawing unease settled over Havenwood. The whispers started. Did he have secrets? Some wondered. Was there something we didn't know? Sheriff Thompson, a man of faith himself, felt a knot of unease in his stomach. Something didn't add up. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. He sat in his office late at night, staring at the missing person file, Father Elijah's smiling face staring back at him. "Where are you, Elijah?" he murmured. "What happened to you?" Elijah Johnson's path to the priesthood was, to put it mildly, unconventional. He hadn't grown up in the church. His early life was a world away from the quiet, God-fearing community of Havenwood. Born James Thomas in the bustling streets of Chicago, he'd had a difficult childhood, marked by poverty and instability. He'd drifted into petty crime, a youthful indiscretion he later deeply regretted. He'd even spent a short time in jail. It was during this period of confinement that he experienced a profound religious awakening. He turned his life around, dedicating himself to God. He earned his GED, went to seminary, and emerged a changed man. He adopted the name Elijah, a biblical figure of strength and faith, and vowed to dedicate his life to serving others. But, as some would later whisper, could a leopard truly change its spots? In Havenwood, Elijah Johnson became a force of nature. He revitalized St. James AME Church, attracting new members with his powerful sermons and his genuine compassion. He wasn't just a preacher. He was a counselor, a mentor, a friend. He visited the sick, comforted the grieving, and offered guidance to troubled youth. He organized food drives, established after-school programs, and became deeply involved in the community. He was, by all appearances, a man of God in every sense of the word. He radiated warmth and sincerity. People trusted him implicitly. They confided in him, sought his advice, and believed in his goodness. He was quite simply beloved. The circumstances surrounding Father Elijah's disappearance were perplexing. He was last seen by Mrs. Evelyn, the church organist, as he left the church late on the night of October 25th, after a meeting with the church elders. He seemed a little preoccupied, Mrs. Evelyn later recalled, but nothing out of the ordinary. He'd wish her good night, and that was the last time anyone in Havenwood saw him. His car remained in the parking lot, his keys still inside. His apartment was neat and tidy, as if he expected to return at any moment. There was no sign of forced entry, no indication of a struggle. It was as if he'd simply vanished into thin air. What could explain such a mysterious disappearance? Had he met with foul play? Had he decided to leave Havenwood for reasons unknown? Or was there a more sinister explanation? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Sheriff Thompson and his deputies meticulously investigated every possible lead. They interviewed parishioners, friends, and family. They searched the surrounding area, combed the woods, and even dragged the local river. But they found nothing. No clues, no witnesses, no trace of Father Elijah. The mystery deepened, and the town held its breath. The initial theories were all dead ends. There was no evidence of foul play, no indication that he'd left voluntarily. It was as if he'd simply ceased to exist. The lack of answers only fueled the growing unease in Havenwood. Rumors began to circulate, whispers of secret affairs, hidden debts, and long-forgotten sins. But no one could offer any concrete evidence to support these claims. One theory that gained traction was that Father Elijah had run off with a woman. He was a handsome man, charismatic and charming. Several women in the church had developed crushes on him, and some had even confessed their feelings. But there was no evidence to suggest that he'd reciprocated these affections. Another theory centered around the church's finances. Rumors spread that Father Elijah had been embezzling money, that he'd stolen from the church coffers and fled with the cash. But a thorough audit of the church's books revealed no irregularities. These red herrings only served to deepen the mystery and increase the anxiety in Havenwood. The town was gripped by fear and uncertainty. What had happened to their beloved pastor? As the weeks turned into months, the Havenwood Police Department, overwhelmed by the complexity of the case, requested assistance from the FBI. The disappearance of a respected community leader was now a federal matter. Agent Sarah Miller, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for her sharp mind and relentless pursuit of the truth, was assigned to the case. She arrived in Havenwood, a small town she'd never heard of before, and stepped into a community shrouded in mystery and fear. She sensed the tension in the air, the unspoken questions that hung heavy over the town. She knew that solving this case wouldn't be easy. She was about to unravel a web of deceit that would shock Havenwood to its core. What secrets was Father Elijah hiding? Agent Miller, unlike the local police, had access to resources and databases that allowed her to delve deeper into Elijah Johnson's past. She began by meticulously reviewing the initial investigation, re-interviewing every witness, scrutinizing every piece of evidence. She also focused on Elijah's background, tracing his life back to his childhood in Chicago. And that's when she found it. A small but significant detail that had been overlooked by the local police. A discrepancy in his Social Security records. A name that didn't quite match. It was a tiny thread, but Agent Miller knew that even the smallest thread could unravel a complex tapestry. This detail suggested that Elijah Johnson wasn't who he claimed to be. It was a major turning point in the investigation. The focus shifted. This was no longer just a missing person case. It was something much more complicated, much more sinister. Agent Miller's discovery of the discrepancy in Elijah's records opened a Pandora's box of secrets. She began to piece together the truth about his past, a past he'd carefully concealed from Havenwood. She discovered that Elijah Johnson was an assumed name. His real name was James Thomas. And James Thomas had a criminal record. He'd been involved in various scams and cons over the years, preying on vulnerable people, stealing their money, and disappearing without a trace. He was a chameleon, a master of disguise, able to adapt to any situation, to gain people's trust and then betray them. The revelation of his true identity sent shockwaves through Havenwood. The man they'd trusted, the man they'd loved, was a fraud. He'd been living a lie, and they'd all been fooled. James Thomas had reinvented himself as Elijah Johnson, a man of God. He'd used his charisma and charm to build a new life, a life of respect and adoration. He'd escaped his past, or so he thought, and created a new identity, a new persona. He'd become a pillar of the community, a symbol of hope and faith. But his past was about to catch up with him. Agent Miller's investigation revealed the extent of his deception. He'd been living a lie for years, moving from town to town. The extent of James Thomas's deception was staggering. He hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen something far more valuable: trust. He'd systematically manipulated the people of Havenwood, exploiting their faith and goodwill for his own gain. He'd siphoned off church funds, not for a lavish lifestyle as some might have imagined, but to cover his tracks, to maintain the illusion of respectability. He'd seduced and abandoned several women, leaving a trail of broken hearts and shattered lives. These weren't just fleeting romances. These were calculated acts of manipulation designed to solidify his position in the community, to present the image of a loving, devoted man. He'd built his entire life on a foundation of lies, a house of cards waiting to collapse. The revelation of Father Elijah's true identity ripped through Havenwood like a tornado. The community was devastated. They felt betrayed, violated, their trust shattered into a million pieces. The man they had revered, the man they had confided in, the man they had loved, was a fraud. The sense of shock and disbelief was overwhelming. How could they have been so wrong about him? How could they have been so blind? The pain of betrayal was deep and raw. People felt foolish, gullible, their faith in human nature shaken to its core. The whispers started again, but this time they were filled with anger and resentment. How could he do this to us, they asked. How could he betray our trust like that? James Thomas, now stripped of his priestly guise, was arrested and charged with a litany of crimes: fraud, theft, grand larceny, and more. The trial was a media frenzy. Reporters from across the country descended on Havenwood, eager to witness the unraveling of the Father Elijah myth. The courtroom was packed with residents, their faces a mixture of anger, sadness, and morbid curiosity. They wanted answers. They wanted justice. They wanted to understand how they could have been so thoroughly deceived. One by one, James Thomas's victims took the stand, their voices trembling as they recounted their stories of manipulation and betrayal. Women he had charmed and then abandoned, their lives in tatters. Parishioners he had swindled out of their hard-earned money, their trust used as a weapon against them. Their testimonies painted a chilling portrait of a cold, calculating con artist, a man who preyed on the vulnerable, who exploited people's faith and trust without a shred of remorse. He was so kind, one woman sobbed. I trusted him completely. I never thought he would hurt me. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence against Thomas. Financial records detailing his fraudulent activities. Testimony from his victims, their voices filled with pain and anger. And perhaps most damning of all, excerpts from his personal journal, where he had coldly documented his manipulations, revealing his complete lack of conscience. The evidence was overwhelming. There was no doubt about his guilt. The jury deliberated for several grueling hours. The tension in the courtroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. And then, the moment everyone had been waiting for, the jury returned, guilty, on all counts. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Justice had been served. Or had it? James Thomas was sentenced to 20 years in prison, a fitting punishment, many thought. But for the people of Havenwood, the sentence felt like a small consolation for the profound damage he had inflicted. Prison life was a harsh reality for James Thomas. Gone was the respect, the adoration, the carefully constructed persona of Father Elijah. He was now just another inmate, stripped of his power, his charm, his lies. He was no longer a man of God, but a convicted felon, facing the consequences of his actions. Havenwood slowly began the long and difficult process of healing. The community came together, supporting each other, trying to rebuild their shattered trust. It wasn't easy. The scars of betrayal ran deep, but they were determined to move forward, to reclaim their lives, to rebuild their community. Sheriff Thompson, reflecting on the case, spoke of the cunning and manipulative nature of James Thomas. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing, he said. He fooled everyone, even the FBI. It just goes to show you, you can't always judge a book by its cover. Agent Miller, in a rare interview, discussed the importance of looking beyond appearances. This case taught me that even the most respected figures can harbor dark secrets, she said. We have to be vigilant. We have to be willing to question everything, even when it's uncomfortable. Despite the conviction, some questions remained unanswered. What drove James Thomas to become a con man? What was his ultimate motive? Was it simply greed? Or was there something more complex, something more disturbing at play? These questions lingered in Havenwood, haunting the community long after the trial was over. The Father Elijah case became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving. It shook the community's faith, but it also brought them closer together. They learned a valuable lesson about trust, about forgiveness, and about the resilience of the human spirit. The story of Father Elijah is a chilling example of the power of deception. It demonstrates how a master manipulator can weave a web of lies so intricate that even the most discerning individuals can be ensnared. Could someone like James Thomas be living among us right now, hiding behind a mask of respectability? It's a chilling thought, but a very real possibility. How can we protect ourselves from such predators? How can we learn to see beyond the surface, to recognize the signs of deception? The Father Elijah case underscores the importance of vigilance. It reminds us that we must be willing to question everything, to challenge our assumptions, to look beyond the carefully crafted facades that some people present to the world. At the heart of this story are the human lives that were irrevocably changed by James Thomas's actions. His victims, the women he deceived and abandoned, the parishioners he swindled, the community of Havenwood, forever scarred by his betrayal. What drives someone like James Thomas to live a life of deception? What motivates them to manipulate and exploit others? These are complex questions that psychologists have struggled to answer for years. Is it a need for power? A deep-seated insecurity? Or something more sinister? The Father Elijah case raises profound questions about the role of faith and trust in our lives. How do we reconcile the existence of evil with our belief in a higher power? How do we rebuild our trust after it has been so deeply violated? The media played a crucial role in the Father Elijah case, both in uncovering the truth and in sensationalizing the story. The intense media scrutiny added another layer of complexity to the case, further impacting the community of Havenwood. The justice system ultimately prevailed in bringing James Thomas to justice. But the case also highlights the limitations and flaws of the system. Can justice truly be served in cases like this? Can the damage be undone? Despite the pain and betrayal, the community of Havenwood demonstrated remarkable resilience. They came together to support each other, to heal, and to rebuild their lives. Their strength and determination are a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The story of Father Elijah is a complex and multifaceted one. It's a story of deception, betrayal, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit. It's a story that reminds us that appearances can be deceiving, that even the most trusted figures can harbor dark secrets. It's a story that challenges us to be vigilant, to question everything, and to never take trust for granted. But most importantly, it's a story about the strength of the human spirit, the ability to overcome adversity, to heal, and to find hope even in the darkest of times. What do you think of this story? Have you ever encountered someone like James Thomas? How do you think we can protect ourselves from such individuals? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more mysterious crime stories that will shock and amaze you.